Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Get Heard podcast. In this episode of podcast, we are going to talk all about crypto, digital asset, how crypto is changing the world as we speak, and everything new that's happening around crypto space. In order to do that, I have invited Jeff Yu, who is the former CEO of Binance Australia and founder and CEO of Monochrome Asset Management. Welcome to Get Out Podcast, Jeff.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks for having me today.
How's everything? Everything's good at your end with the lockdown?
It's good. In Brisbane here, we're lucky enough to sort of come out the lockdown over the weekend. Just great, seeing people back in the office, meeting clients and things like that. It just makes things a little bit more exciting when you have that personal touch. That being said, that we have all to be take care of ourselves in the lockdown. For those that are still in the lockdown in other states, we're still here sort of in terms of being virtual connected. That's totally fine, and it's normal with us as well. I'm quite familiar with those way of communication.
Yeah. We used to have our podcast face to face as well. As you said, like that personal touch and being present while speaking to the person. But we got to do what we got to do, and this is our first virtual podcast. And thanks for taking your time off with your busy schedule and uh, being present here, speaking about everything crypto. So let's get into it. First things first, how long you been in like the crypto space for?
I first heard about Bitcoin in 2013. I actually made a LinkedIn post this morning to remind myself what I said about Bitcoin 8 years ago now. Time flies. So,
Mm,
what attracted me to Bitcoin was the idea that it's a money that is not backed by mats, and it's not backed by people or central banks that over time have that history of breaking those trusts. I think Bitcoin is very clearly a response to 2008, GFC, what's born out of the ashes of it. To see something like that flourish still 12 years on, have not suffered anything major attacks, has withstood government bans, all sorts of, civil war attacks, and still remain resilient, just demonstrates, the promise that it can bring to the world, and what sort of value it represents.
definitely. I think Bitcoin has been pronounced, so as to say, dead by journalists multiple amount of times, and it has been called, say, a scam of the decade. It's been called numerous other Ponzi scheme and different other negative comments, but it has still been going strong, and it's stronger than ever. There has been numerous amount of infrastructure built around it. A lot of new innovations has been implemented to make digital currency as our main source of currency, so as to say. What I like about crypto is it's a very new space as well. I personally, I thought you would be much older yourself, but looking at your experience, but we have a lot of new youngster coming into the space and who understands the space and wants to develop it for the future generations. Do you reckon there'll be more older generations coming into the crypto anytime sooner?
I think it's already happening. With my current sort of role at Monochrome, which we are a traditional fund management business that specialize in passive exposure to Bitcoin for wholesale clients in Australia, and the clients that we deal with are from a demographic that you typically imagine for a person that is in finance for many years. We deal with family offices, we deal with financial advisors, wealth platforms, high net worth individuals, folks like that, which is very, very day to day for us. So over the past, especially in the past, one month or so, when Bitcoin has sort of like went through its sort of the how many nth time of correction, which is quite normal for a nascent asset of this nature. And then back to the point of like whether that people are skeptical about this. I think it's healthy to have that skepticism in this nascent industry, because the people that comes from that financial professions, they are trained to be very skeptical and be very heavy on due diligence of the products they touch, because they're dealing with other people's money, not just theirs. So having those way of balance of opinions matters a lot to us, and it gives us a sense of the level of understanding of the industry. Sometimes, even though some of the headlines can be a little bit satire, can be a little bit ill-informed, but we always look at the perspective of like what led them to think that way when all the facts are here to show that it's completely not true. Is there an agenda behind it? Is it a lack of education? And those are the things we try to address with our communication. From our prints, from our conversation with our clients, and we sort of hope to have more research done in that regard to facilitate that education to the institutional world in Australia.
Do you reckon it's the lack of education and lack of content behind Bitcoin is one of the reason why people are skeptical, or is it some other reason, do you reckon, in your experience?
It's 100% that like education is everything in this space because it's so new, right? 5 years ago, I would have not known about things in Bitcoin that I've known 3 years ago, in 1 year ago, and 6 months ago. The pace of change is so quick in this space. And, that's one of the main problem that I feel that if we can solve this thing, it can really help is to ask for better labeling in this space. You tend to see a lot of people criticize Bitcoin based on the fact that they're criticizing something. And after a conversation, you realize that they're actually not criticizing Bitcoin, they're criticizing Dogecoin, but they kind of lump it all together, right? Or someone is criticizing DeFi. But after you talk to them, it's really, they don't like the aspect that doesn't exist in DeFi, it might exist in NFTs. So, those things kind of like, it's very important to separate the tranches of products and innovation within the space. Like Bitcoin represents a digital store value, aspects of it. It doesn't fight with, say, stable coins. It doesn't fight with central bank digital currency. It doesn't fight with NFTs. They all have their own merits and pros and cons. And it's very important for us as the industry operators and participants, and people that some people look up to have that knife to say, like, look, we have to start labeling things correctly in the interest of investor protection and the interest of investor clarity.
Great answer there. I personally started this podcast as well to send more information out to people who are skeptical and who do not get the right sort of information, and the negative around Bitcoin and how it's progressing so far. Say for miners, for example, I'm heavily involved in the mining community, and it's one of the reason why I started liking Bitcoin was because you have a device that you can run, and you pretty much mine Bitcoin, and you contribute to the network as well and decentralize it more. But then there are news saying negative impacts to the environment, and miners are taking energies and normal people not being able to use enough energy. But the actual truth is Bitcoin or mining, they use the excess energy that's produced. It's not very, impactful the environment as well. Do you agree to that?
I fully agree. Like, there's an article that was written by Lynn Alden that was just published, I think, early today or yesterday, depending where you are, on Swan Bitcoin's website. The problem with sort of energy use is that Bitcoin kind of gets attacked from time to time about its massive energy use, and people sort of, call hell to it. I personally think that, firstly, Bitcoin is an easy target because of how transparent the network is. Like, how do you quantify how much the banking system uses its energy, right?
Yeah.
Do you factor in the just the properties, the workforce, the accountants, the lawyers behind it, the military that backs the sovereignty of the nation, that backs the currency, all these kind of things, has to come into account, which is really hard, to piece together if in a traditional world. And most importantly, you got to look at the energy use of anything, right? With the trade-offs. Even the energy use of, say, a toaster, right, or a dryer. Instead of just leaving your clothes to dry, you want to save time. That time is worth more to you. And it's not like you're sort of Bitcoin, and like I said, Bitcoin is using excess energy, right? It's not sort of taking away energy that, stealing energy from someone to mine Bitcoin. That's obviously not the right way to do it. But the studies have shown that Bitcoin uses more than 50% of renewable energy in terms of mining. And reason why it's renewables because they are usually cheaper form of energy, and their renewables are typically stranded in a lot of places. Give you an example. In Australia just alone, there are at least thousands at this stage. You're sitting in a living room, or bedroom, or whatever, listening to podcasts. There are 24/7, 365 of what we call flares from mining sites, from Santos or whatever that they conduct surveys on, and how they run those methane wells and whatever. Is that they have a 1 to 2 year kind of prospective time frame where they want to assess the contents of the well. So what they do is that they dig a hole, put a pipe in, and then let energy sort of burst out and basically inflame. So it's really raw form energy exiting into the atmosphere. And it's happening like all over Australia, and these are energies that are not put to use. They can sort of plug into some energy source, but the cost of building that framework without actually understanding the costs behind and getting a better sense of the revenue that can bring to the company makes it uneconomical for the mining companies to build up infrastructure to store, transport those energies. Similar thing in China, right? You got all this mega hydro dam that has been built in anticipation of the aluminum production boom in early 2000s, and didn't really quite happen expected, the aluminum boom. And what happens is that all these massive dams just spurring an energy that they can't sell, right? And they can't transport. They can't put in the battery quickly enough, or cost effective enough. And all these energies are being just thrown away into the atmosphere, right? The world produces around 120,000 terawatt hour of energy a year. About 50,000 terawatt hour of the energy is being wasted in form of stranded or wasted energy. Bitcoin provides a last resort to bid for the energy, whereas no one would. Going back to the flare analogy, so analogy is a real thing. So going back to that, the only thing that is worth you to plug go to a remote site and put in a software and connect to the internet and start mining and putting the productive use is Bitcoin mining. There's no other industry, otherwise they wouldn't really exist. And that's basically a way to sort of address some of this wasted energy use. And it brings the debate back from consumption into the production problem. The problem with energy, the whole ESG debate, right? It's really, people are kind of missing the point. The point is not about getting people to use toasters less, or use their dryers less. It's really to question the source, to say, how can we make energy production more efficient? Whereas right now, something like close to 40% of energy that's been produced is going to waste. The toaster that you turn off, or the heaters that you're asked to turn off, it's a small fraction of the problem. There is a bigger problem out there, and we have to address it. And Bitcoin kind of brings that problem into light, I think, more than any other industry so far. And also, think about it, right? Bitcoin might be the most energy efficient monetary network out there. Think of what is the alternative of Bitcoin? A monetary system that can, without someone's control, without an intermediary, can connect 8 billion people around the world to participate in a fair economic standard, in provide a financial inclusion to billions of people. How do you put a value to that network, the benefit of society that network can bring? So overall, I think that these debates are great because it actually helps Bitcoin, helps people understand the problems, where the real problem is, and where the value and the trade-offs are.
I totally agreed with that. I think Bitcoin is, like a incentive to use renewable resources as well, and I think it's just one of the other ways to send more negativism to Bitcoin community and what it's been doing. Moving from that, basically a person can live off cryptocurrency at this stage. I think if he wants to travel somewhere, he can buy it with cryptocurrency. If he wants to pay his bills, he can buy it with Bitcoin. If he wants to, say, eat in any fast food, he can pay with cryptocurrency. But what my question is, it then goes back to what the price of Bitcoin is compared to fiat, compared to US dollars. So what do you think, in your perspective, what it takes for us to, fully go into crypto and just ignore fiat altogether? Does it take like a big crash of 2008? Something like that, or do you think it's just a slow transitional phase where people understand and value digital asset more than fiat?
Yeah, I think sort of the sort of way I frame this is that I don't see Bitcoin overtaking most national currencies. I say most because there are a lot of national currencies that are failing. Like, the stronger ones are US dollar, euro, Chinese yuan, Australian dollar. I don't see Bitcoin replacing their use in society anytime soon. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing, because if you say that Bitcoin's pure existence or the value it derives from is that the fact that you can spend it, then how do you explain gold? Like, no one walks into a convenience store and pay for their whatever Red Bull or something like that with gold, or shavings of gold. It depends on what the price is. And to me is that it is basically a new form of money, right? And what is money? This is why people get it wrong all the time, because when people look at Bitcoin, they look at payments and look at, if I can pay with it, I can get salary in Bitcoin. Oh, that's a use case. But that's kind of like a, wise man's once said that when a wise person points to the moon, the fool looks at a finger, right? So it's kind of a thing in this space where you can't blame people. Like, I came into this space bringing that assumption as well, and over time it got corrected by education and things like that. So in terms of what is a digital asset, you got to understand what Bitcoin is, and the Bitcoin is seen as a digital asset. And digital asset, just asset as digital, it represents value. It can be facilitated for a current or a future exchange of value in the virtual world, or potentially for a physical good, right? And you can really do that with, say, MPP, right? Pay ID money. I can send you digital money, digital Australian dollars from my Commonwealth Bank app to your Westpac app, and that's digital money, right? That already existed, but the biggest problem in this digital space is that you can send videos, you can send files, you can send music or something like that through the internet, but you can't send money, right? The reason why you can't do that is because something called the double spend problem, right? Basically what it kind of is that you don't want people to be able to duplicate money that's been sent over a virtual contract or virtual environment, because that's gonna create problems. You can duplicating cat videos is fine, but duplicating your paycheck isn't, right? It's not a joke anymore. So over time, as the internet evolved, the concept of money has tried to sort of brought into the internet world. And the only way to sort of prevent that problem of duplicating, digital money is to use intermediaries like Visa, like banks, and their role heavily is revolving around fraud prevention and making sure the accounting things all line up, and plus everything else they do, right? And the problem with having control over something that important, which is the source of truth of money, becomes a problem in the digital world, right? It's less of a problem when we still have physical money or things like cash going around, where it's really easy to not trust someone to transfer value over space, right? So for example, if I owe you $10 and I don't trust people online to bring that $10 over to you, I can actually bring the $10 note, take a bus or whatever to find you, and hey, here it is, and we change hand, and that's it. That's end of the transaction. But if that disappears, what does this mean is that you can only rely on the bus drivers of the internet to bring that money across. And what if they break the trust? And what if they amass so much power that it becomes a problem? And who should be the kings? Who should be the gods in that world? So Bitcoin promises a money, an alternative that says that, hey, look, money, it's a basic form of social construct, which is basically things within the community that people recognize as a value and decide to sort of use it as a means of payment, use it as a store of value, use it as a unit account, right? And that sort of manifested into over time into like gold is the universally recognized store of value all across multiple civilization. And now in the internet age, the transformation of that is that gold is not a really good means of payment in the internet world. You can't tip someone, if you decide you like someone's TikTok, you want to sort of send them some money, you can't do it over gold. You can probably still use PayPal if you live in 50 countries in the world, and what happens if you live in the other 150 countries or something like that, whatever. But that's basically becomes a human rights issue of having access to financial products in the world. And I think that's very important to have everyone involved in this internet age, because the world has so much talented people, so much good people around the world, but we are the minority. Like those that have access to financial products or access, even having the ability to sort of protect their wealth by investing or whatever not, we are the minority in the world. There are a lot of people out there that are being screwed because they're just born in a place that doesn't have the same access, and Bitcoin is a lifeboat to them. I think that's a really good thing to see.
I think people have access to internet and mobile phone these days, but they don't have any bank accounts. They don't have the access to the facilities that these financial institutes provide, and they don't even give a damn about those people, because they don't add value to their business, so as to say. And I think Bitcoin becoming it as a borderless countryless transaction, people can set up a wallet just through their mobile phone using the internet, and they can have custody of their own asset. And also, I think what people fail to understand is when we speak about digital world or virtual world, they think it's something of complex world that people have created. But Amazon is a virtual world. Facebook or TikTok is a virtual world as well. When we look at it, and we can trade in those virtual world, we can trade information, we can trade, stuff that's in the physical world as well. So as like Facebook Marketplace, when we want to buy stuff, we can trading from the virtual world to the physical world. Bitcoin as an internet money can really have a larger impact than we anticipate as well, is what I believe. Moving to a next question. All this Bitcoin and digital asset, and when a cryptocurrency, me coming from a technical background, IT background, is very complex to myself. But I think it will be a much more complex to any normal person, even an educated person as well, who can read and write. It'll be very, hard concept to grasp. How do you think it can be made easier for people to understand this concept, and make it more accessible to people?
I think it comes to the education that's really important. When someone tells you, generally, someone tells you like, look, Bitcoin is too complicated, crypto is complicated. Like, hey, you don't understand how a credit card works, and you still use them, right? Trust me, that's a major red flag, right? I sort of see that as a way to sort of cover the fact that you're not being transparent to your audiences about the specifics of it. And the way I sort of try to sort of educate people is that what gives Bitcoin value, right? That's a very big question. People ask, look, it's not backed by anything. It doesn't generate any income, doesn't generate yield. So what gives it value? So Bitcoin is a network, first of all, right? And the Bitcoin network promises that you can, record, you can settle, and you can keep records of the settlements, in a safer way by distributing it to multiple parties. So, having one referee in a football game, whereas one referee is easy to co-op or tamper with or corrupt. You have 100 referees. It makes a sort of the football game more expensive to host because you got to pay 100 referees, one person. You got to incentivize 100 people instead of one person. But the trade-offs that you get is something that is more robust. So for that reason, if the football game is like a kid's football game that it's a fun thing over the weekend, maybe one referee is enough. But if you're talking about like a FIFA level where there are millions of dollars involved and everything along the sides, you have to make sure that the protocols are there in place to prevent fraud and prevent things that you don't want to happen, or tampering. So a key part of appeal with Bitcoin is that it's decentralized. Decentralized is basically what saying that you separate the controls of more people, but it's more than that. Decentralization is a governance method, right? And coming from an institutional product level, governance is a word that's been thrown around a lot, and that's really important because you can make things really cheap and really quick and really simple by removing the safety nets around it. But that necessarily makes that it's a good alternative to the incumbent. And I feel that a lot of people take that in the wrong way. Like people feel that sometimes they look at a traditional institution, they go like, why do you have this? Why do you have that person? Why is there so many people involved? Without actually understanding their roles and responsibilities. Then they say that if I take away this, take away that, make this instead of 2 days, can make it 1 day. But that's not the case. They are there in place to make sure that the rules that are set to run the show, run the business, won't be tampered with by, say, one employee or a company, founder going rogue and decides to change the rules. In the context of Bitcoin, it will be, the protocol rules, like, the issuance schedule of Bitcoin, the reward mechanism, the past records of Bitcoin transactions and settlements. Those are things that cannot be tampered with, because if you can demonstrate that you can change those parameters with a flick of a switch, then what if things change to something that is completely out of your interest, and then you are the person that's getting screwed, and we end up with a weaker governance system than the current sort of system that a lot of this crypto was trying to overthrow. And it's really hard to explain to people from how to explain people from the perspective of, like, if I look at digital assets and all I want to see is faster transactions, or all I want to see is better privacy, or all I want to see is like, whatever, insert like a feature. You have to look at Bitcoin as an overall arching software, right? It has to have all these pieces in part. And for example, like, why do we even need the token Bitcoin instead of just letting the network run itself? The problem is that how do you incentivize a network that is decentralized and not supposed to be controlled by anybody to run? Like, humans are fed on incentives. Like, you need to get people to participate, people to secure it, people to use it. And the genius idea that Satoshi came out was that to create this byproduct of that called the Bitcoin, right? Basically, Bitcoin network, the Bitcoin, the token. So the Bitcoin token is effectively a reward that comes up from the protocol, the Bitcoin protocol, every 10 minutes since the beginning of time, 2009. So what it does is that it's basically a token that over time people associate values to, right? A Bitcoin within a Bitcoin network doesn't care how much it's worth. It could be worth $1, it could be worth $1 million. It does its own thing. It does its thing with that fill. It doesn't change its preference or whatnot. It doesn't change its shape. And what gives it the value is that the scarcity aspects of Bitcoin, saying that, look, there's only 21 million Bitcoin. There won't be any more than that, right? And it's really, no one can change that rule, as demonstrated by multiple coup attempts, multiple government bans, multiple civil wars that tries in one way or the other change the issuance schedules and part of the parameters of Bitcoin. And you can't do that. And basically, that's a genius of the Bitcoin software. And the resilience and predictability of this protocol ensures long-term good governance of the network, which gives this token a valuation framework that is easier to value over time. It's not something that, if I put in, $100 to get 100 tokens, the founders might decide to change the things around. They might to drop me more tokens. I have no way of knowing it. It's like a punt. But with Bitcoin, it comes with a unmatched sense of predictability and security over any other stuff on the cryptoverse at this stage. And that's really where the value is. Like, that basically sets off the assessment, not just as a long-term suitable investment option, but also a platform for you to develop products on top of. Like, look at everything in the world, like even nature, the internet, the transport network, pretty much anything in software or anything in physical world, built and scales in layers, right? Bitcoin is the first layer that we see. It's the equivalent of the Bank of International Settlements that is being used to settle settlements between central banks around the world. And they do it quite infrequently. And every time they do it, it's in like huge sizes. And it doesn't, obviously, it's not cheap. And then you have like the layers on top of that. You got the RTGS layer, you got all this kind of PID layer, you got Venmo and PayPal and Visa, whatever on top. So Bitcoin is kind of still going that path of scaling in that direction. We should look at how the development of the Lightning Network, for example, which is kind of building a transactional layer on top of the Bitcoin protocol, and it uses Bitcoin, the network, the base protocol, as a core instead of a settlement layer. So it only puts in the most important bits into it, and doesn't populate it junk basically to build up the space. Because blockchain is still data. You have to keep the data manageable, right? If you build that data too big, less people are able to use it. It becomes more expensive to upkeep and even participate. And that's really where I think the value of Bitcoin stands out from the rest of the products in the space.
How do you reckon Australia stands in terms of adoption of Bitcoin and building regulations around Bitcoin compared to other nations of the world?
Yeah, I mean, like with players like us, what we're trying to do, like Monochrome, is that we are here to facilitate that 0 to 1 adoption in a regulated and familiar investment vehicle for institutional investors. And it's very important to have institutional investors back a new innovation because unlike retail, retail is less sticky money. They come in and go, but institutional players, when they come in, they bring in not just the experience, they also bring in their lawyers, their accountants, their lobbyists to better develop and protect the asset class as it grows. So I think in Australia we get a good blend of people. Obviously, there are still people that are exploiting that ambiguity and running their own shady sort of stuff. But I've been a very vocal voice of calling out all these behaviors in the space, and even you see some of my articles in the Sydney Morning Herald, for example, calling for regulation, things like that. I think it's very important. Like we engage with ASIC, the financial regulator, very closely to come up with current and future products. And I think that's really important to engage not with regulators but also policymakers to get the space into make the space useful, make the asset useful, not just to you but for people after you. And it's like planting a tree that I kind of describe it as it's like planting a tree knowing that I won't be here or life eventually to have people sit under the tree as it grows, because I think we're just at the really inch of the beginning of this new asset class, and this is going to be a once in a millennium type of transformation, and it will take decades to play out. I have the early conviction. I'm sort of converted over years of studying this asset class, and sort of I'm just helping to pave that road to people that are coming after me a little bit.
I really love the way you said we won't be here to, bear the fruits of the seed that we sow, and I think as humans, we would like to do things bigger than ourselves as well for our future generation, um, make life pretty much better for people. And my question here is, say, any guy who is interested in crypto and would like to get involved in crypto and want to help a person like you, uh, sow those seed. What sort of actions would you recommend to those people?
I think first of all, is to be very careful when you describe Bitcoin or when you mention a certain innovation within the cryptoverse. You don't, in the beginning of the podcast, we mentioned one of the problems that people kind of loop everything together in one basket and assess the pros and cons with that, and that's a very bad way to start. And people kind of get very mixed information and too much noise, to be honest, to be able to filter out what's good and what's bad. There are digital assets that are here to be a store value like Bitcoin. There are programmable assets like Ethereum. There are NFTs. There are CBDC stablecoins. Just start by labeling them correctly when you describe it to somebody. Even to regulators, even to journalists that you're talking to, even to friends and family, no matter what your background or what we're trying to do. Start the conversation with people and stop calling everything in one lump. Call everything crypto, right? Call Bitcoin crypto, and that leads down to a very steep slope of ambiguity, and that is where sort of people kind of get lost, and some people might take advantage of that.
Great answer. I think there has been a lot of confusions because I know a lot of youngsters have been involved, and I think with youngsters myself personally, we tend to do less of a research and try to bring opinions in more. And I myself would like to be very careful in talking about the sensitive topics so that there's less confusion, so as to say. What is your role in Monochrome, and what do you provide to the wholesale investors? Can you talk about that a bit?
So, I'm the founder and CEO of Monochrome Asset Management. We're a fund management business here based in Brisbane. And I founded Monochrome after feeling a strong industry push for a product that properly caters to institutions. Many of you know my prior experience was launching and leading Australia's largest and most liquid digital asset exchange, Binance Australia, where I was there as a CEO till I left to start Monochrome. And my experience there, it tells me that there is a significant gap in Australia, and the Australian wholesale market in particular, to gain exposure to Bitcoin and digital assets. And because it's just not as simple as a retail. Retail, we just walk up to an exchange, buy some Bitcoin, chuck it in our cold storage and call it a day, right? Or some people prefer to keep it on an exchange or whatnot. But wholesale investors and professional investors, especially the more larger your institution is, the accumulation procedures and compliance stuff is just too much to handle, and it's just not compatible. You just can't walk up to an exchange and buy Bitcoin. You can do that, but your accountants and lawyers will hate you. And we're seeing problems like that. People kind of went down and trying to sort of reverse the accumulation procedures, and it's messy. So I just felt that look, if no one's doing the right thing and pushing for the right product out there, why not I do it, right? And it's not like we haven't looked, right? In my tenure as CEO of the digital asset exchange, people come to me for types of access that they're looking for, and we say that, look, we can't serve you here, but check this out, check that out. But more time and time, they come back with feedback about why they can't do that, or why this product is not to the standards, or why they can't use it. And they just go like, Jeff, if you can do it this way, we really appreciate it, right? And I didn't take it at heart at the time. I just thought, yeah, good feedback, but it's not really a space that we play in. I can't help you, sorry. And it kind of goes to the mind. It's like, look, hold on, I have all this bunch of research that a bunch of wholesale investors are out there doing for me effectively. And I just talked to a couple of my friends and guys around me, and just thought that why not just do it ourselves. And that's kind of where Monochrome is the idea was born. And effectively, what we are doing now is that we are helping the Australian wholesale market, high net worth family offices, institution, even super funds, to gain exposure to Bitcoin digital asset without compliance and security risks associated with engaging with all these new technologies and custody wallets and things like that. And we pride ourselves by offering an institutional grade exposure and experience to our clients, and emphasizing on the compliance and simplicity. And that's a reason why we only do single asset passive. We see a Bitcoin fund for institutions not really as a product, but as an access. We're helping them gain access to, say, if they want to have 1% in a portfolio of Bitcoin, this is the way to do it, right? 5%, whatever they decide. We're here to just show them how. And within a short period of time, we have established our Monochrome's voice in the market to speak on our topic of institutional investments in the space. And we've been at conferences, we've been to the media with various publication in trade press and various sources like that, to talk about topics about how does a financial advisor look into the space and what you should do, or you should be concerning yourself with when viewing or considering a digital asset, Bitcoin treasury strategy, for example. And also talk about things about regulation and give a bit more sense and clarity in what people feel uncomfortable about, and we just help them to sort of bring them into the space like a helping hand. That's really what I do on a day-to-day basis, and I really enjoy that, to be honest. Like seeing people turning from skepticism to curious to believers. You just can't imagine how fulfilling it kind of feels to you personally until you see that happen in front of your eyes.
It must be amazing to see someone believe, first they come very confused, a lot of questions, and because it's a very sensitive topic as well. Then you go through that process of, answering their questions, clearing their confusions, and having them to believe in what you personally believe as well, and what you believe it works. That must be an amazing feeling.
Yeah. And I want to add so that it's not just me, right? Monochrome is I call it a young company with an old soul. The management team is made up of people that are from very high an experience, very sort of senior and very experienced, places in the traditional, financial markets, and also in finance management, in super funds, for example. And those are a few talents that we grab, places of talents we grab from. What we like to say is that we put religion at the door, and really assess this asset class and the problems in industry in a very objective manner. We don't give Bitcoin any concession just because we may like it or we might prefer it. Everything else has to follow through on a very high level of standard, and we don't compromise on that. And that's a message we want to send out too, is that don't get sold the idea that, oh, because it's Bitcoin, it's new and everything, it's okay if you do it this way, okay if you do it less than what you would typically do for anything else in your portfolio. Like, we're here to tell you that, no, why do you need compromise? There are ways that you can do it in the highest manner or standard, and we're here to show you how. Because that's the most future-proof way of dealing with, a thing like Bitcoin.
Not true. I think, especially with the new space, people tend to be a bit, it'll work. Why do we have to be fully compliant? Why do we have to fully follow the regulations? But, especially with the new space, there could be a lot of loopholes as well if we're not careful. Just before we go, I think we're coming slowly to an end of our podcast. Do you have any suggestions to our viewers who are wanting to have their careers in blockchain or crypto space? Do you have, there has to be a lot of new careers that will be coming out with this adoption. So do you have any suggestions for them?
I think sort of, everyone has their own, strengths and passions to follow. I think sort of looking at what you're good at, and see how much value you can add to Glacier. If you, for example, if you're good in writing, you can write some pieces of education, or even come look for us. Might have an exposition for you if you're good at writing about Bitcoin or about digital assets in general. If you're a good coder, there's a bunch of opportunities here. There's a big lack of software talents in this industry, and that's a very well-known problem for many years now. If you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, this basically, I would say that don't get confused by the glitter of the space. Everything else is business as usual, except the fact that the asset you're dealing with is A instead of B. And really to use that mindset all throughout, I would say is the best way forward. Like, don't give concession to Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever crypto assets you're working on or crypto projects that you're involved in, just because you think it's new and you think it doesn't deserve or need certain rules in place or governance in place. Like, you have to treat everything like normal, and just like instead of bananas as apples, treat it the same way you treat the other. And that's really a good place to start. Regulation will keep up, regulation will catch up, and it's really catching up really quickly in a lot of countries, including Australia. And the days of the Wild West has to go and has to die off, in the interest of everyone else's future in this space, especially for retail investors that are heavily exposed to the sector in a wide range of products. There will be a big consolidation of services and products, I would say, the next 5 to 10 years, as regulation catches on. And just really position yourself in that knowledge and know how to see where your talent fits, I guess. And talk to recruiters, talk to companies, talk to founders, listen to podcasts would be a good place to start, I guess.
Yeah, they should definitely listen to Get Heard podcast more often. Yeah, and I really liked about the way you said everything, it glitters from the outside, but it's business as usual, because there are a lot of people who are trying to get into Bitcoin because they think they can, get rich quick and just make money easily. But it's just another asset altogether, and there will be a lot of regulations coming along the way as well. Just before we end our podcast, is there any book that you would like to share that made a lot of impact to our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, there's a recent book that I came across and I finished called The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth. It's a very good book to understand, not specifically in Bitcoin, but really how money works in society and, along those topics. I think it's very important to understand what money is before you understand Bitcoin. And that's really where people kind of get it wrong all the time. So they try to sort of, back to the thing is that when a wise man points at the moon, the fool looks at a finger. I was a fool back then. And instead of, with all this education and all these books, it helps me, guide me out of that trance. So it's really helpful to me. I hope that it will be helpful to you guys as well.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for your time. Do check out monochrome.co. Jeff and his team are working really hard to bring Bitcoin to the masses here in Australia, and leading leading the industry. We wish you all the best, Jeff. And where can people find you?
So, if you want to drop me a DM on Twitter, Twitter is just vnumerous, VNUMERIS. Or I'm on LinkedIn as well, it's just Jeff Yu over there. Or you can just drop us a message give us a shout at the website. There's an inquiry box that you can just, say whatever you want us to sort of, get back to you on, inquiries or suggestions or feedback, all welcomed.
Alrighty, you heard him. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next episode.